Ranger.
Hi-yo, Silver!
A fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty Hi-yo Silver. The Lone Ranger.
Hi-yo, Silver! Away!
With his faithful Indian companion Tonto, the daring and resourceful masked rider of the plains led the fight for law and order in the early West. Return with us now to those thrilling days of yesteryear. The Lone Ranger rides again.
Sir, how does this sound? Dear Tonto, I arrived here by stage yesterday to spend my college vacation with you and the Lone Ranger. I was sorry to learn from my uncle that you're away, but I know how long you've been looking forward to a visit with Chief Thundercloud and his people at the reservation. I hope you'll be able to return before my vacation ends. Well, the only trouble so far is that there doesn't seem to be much excitement out here anymore. Of course, the Lone Ranger and I have...
Dan, listen.
Sounds like a stagecoach, sir. And it's going mighty fast.
Too fast. Look.
It's a runaway.
Saddle Victor and follow.
Right.
The driver's been shot. They also robbed the strong box.
Should we take the driver back to town?
Yes, Dan.
Stay right where you are, both of you. The Lone Ranger.
Sheriff John Trent. It's been a long time.
It sure has. But where's Tonto?
He's away at the moment. This is a friend of mine, Dan Reid.
How are you, Dan? Zach, put your gun up. These men are on our side.
Yes. We worked together to capture the Colton gang.
My deputy and I were on our way out to meet this stage. It was carrying more than $10,000 of Wells Fargo cash.
Is it gone?
Yes, the strong box has been robbed and the driver was killed.
Weren't there any guards riding with that amount of money?
No, they didn't want to draw attention to the stage. The Wells Fargo people were dead certain no one knew what this stage was carrying.
We may be able to follow their trail. We'll ride back and try and locate the spot the robbery took place. Will you come with us, Sheriff?
I sure will. Zach, drive this stage back into town.
Sure.
Take care of the driver and tell the Wells Fargo people that we're on the trail of the killers.
Right.
That's the last of it, over $10,000.
What good that money will do us out here. I think we ought to divide it up and ride out of this territory.
Don't be in such a hurry, Mason. Hiding the money is all part of the boss's plan.
Yeah, but he's not taking none of the risks.
We wouldn't even have the $10,000 if he hadn't tipped us off. Now relax.
Miller's right, Hook. If we all left town right after the stage robbery, the sheriff would be on our trail quicker than you could blink an eye.
This way, we go back to Orville and wait for the ruckus to die down. We can even demand that the sheriff bring in the outlaws. When he doesn't produce them, we'll have a good excuse to leave town.
Suppose the sheriff already picked up our trail.
What's he going to do? Arrest 3 honest prospectors?
That might go for you two, but not me. If the law catches me again, I get put away for life. And you can bet your last nickel I won't be caught. Not alive.
Just use your head and you won't get caught. Now what are you doing?
Putting this map I just drew of this place in a safe spot.
See that you don't lose that map, Mason. Without it, we'd never be able to find this spot again. All these rocks around here look alike. Come on, let's eat. Mason, you build up the fire. We'll get the grub. Then we'll head back to town.
Sheriff, look.
The tracks are leading right up to that smoke. Seems like they're taking an awful chance camping out in the open like that.
Maybe they've left camp already.
We'd better move cautiously. Dan, you go with the sheriff. Approach the camp from the right. I'll go in from the left.
Don't move, mister. Drop your guns.
Now move over there.
It's Hook Mason. Figured he might pull something like this. He's been out of jail less than a year. I didn't intend to kill him. I was aiming for his gun hand.
It's not your fault, Sheriff. He jumped as you fired.
Maybe you two have something to say.
We don't know what you're talking about. We're just honest prospectors trying to make a living.
Which includes holding up the Wells Fargo stage and killing the driver?
You're out of your mind, mister.
Dan, search their saddlebags.
You did the only shooting we saw. Killing poor Hook Mason in cold blood.
He pulled his gun.
Sure. What'd you expect? Probably thought you were a bunch of outlaws or something. That mask?
Mason didn't see this mask. Now, where's the money you took from the stage?
You got us figured wrong, mister.
There's no sign of any money.
We're gonna take you in just the same.
On what charge?
The trail from the Wells Fargo stage led us to this camp. That spells a charge of robbery and murder.
You can't prove a thing.
By the time we're through talking, the whole town is going to hear how the sheriff shot down Hook Mason without a chance.
Yeah, and him married less than 6 months. Trying to go straight, too, to make up for his past.
Mount your horses and tell your story in the courtroom.
Dan and I'll take care of Hook Mason's body.
Crow, I don't know what makes you
Hello,
think...
Sheriff. I expected you to be busting in here. I see you've read the paper.
You're doggone right I have, Crow. How can you sit behind that desk and write lies like that?
I write what I believe, Sheriff. You have no evidence against Miller and Holt. Furthermore, that badge doesn't give you the right to go around shooting innocent people.
It was Hook Mason's life or mine. I can't fight with words the way you do.
Don't you know that the pen is mightier than the sword?
Right, pretty words. Till the bullets start flying around you.
Sheriff, all you've said is fine. Fine for your own conscience. But there's one thing you forgot.
Yeah, what's that?
Hook Mason's widow. What happens to her?
Dan, this newspaper story doesn't make much sense. How could anyone believe that Holt and Miller are telling the truth?
The newspaper editor, Crow, believes it all right.
Well, that's just it. People are easily led by what they read in the papers.
The things Crow says about Sheriff Trent are vicious.
They're more than vicious, Dan. It's almost as though Crowell was trying to get Sheriff Trent lynched.
Do you suppose there's some personal battle going on between them that we know nothing about?
And that's possible.
Newspaper men should be free to write what they believe. But this seems so unfair.
Dan, freedom of the press carries a great amount of responsibility. Good reporting covers both sides of a story, not only one.
I guess Crowell doesn't understand that. Why, Sheriff Trent's done more than his share to bring law and order to this community. And yet Crowell refers to him as a trigger-happy gunman.
And he completely overlooks Hook Mason's record. Dan, if we could find that stolen money, prove that Holt and Miller know where it's hidden, Sheriff John Trent would have a case.
Someone's coming.
Well, it's the sheriff. Hello, John.
Howdy. I'm going to have to ask your help again, masked man. Sort of a personal favor.
We had no plans of leaving until this whole thing had been cleared up. We've read the paper. I'm sorry, John.
Oh, what Crowell says doesn't bother me, but if he affects the release of those prisoners, I'm just afraid some others might get hurt.
Who is Crowell? Has he a personal grudge against you?
Oh, he and I don't see eye to eye on anything, but it's never been anything serious before. You see, since Frank Crowell came to Orville, he's worked his way into a lot of businesses. Even got some stock in the freight line. People look up to him, think he's a big man.
I don't understand. If Crowell owns part of the freight line, I should think he'd want to see the outlaws in jail.
That's kind of the way I figured it, Dan, but it's beginning to look like he's in cahoots with Holt and Miller, the way he's been sticking up for him.
Maybe he is, Sheriff.
Oh, what are you getting at?
Oh, nothing. Just a thought. You mentioned a favor. What is it you want me to do?
Well, I got Hook Mason's personal effects in my saddlebags. I was going over to pay his widow a visit. She's selling out, returning back east.
And you want me to go along with you?
Well, with that newspaper story and all this talk, I figured it may be a little difficult to convince her that Mason's death was something I could have avoided.
I understand, John. Dan, I'd like you to go into town. See how the townspeople feel about the sheriff. I doubt if they'd talk in front of him.
Yes, sir.
Be careful, Dan.
So I figured, Mrs. Mason, with all these stories going around, you ought to hear my version.
What can I do, Sheriff? Agree that you were right to kill my husband?
Believe me, Mrs. Mason, it was self-defense. Sheriff Trent had no alternative.
Then why is it that every problem has to be settled with a gun?
We hope it won't always be like that, Mrs. Mason. But as long as criminals prey on innocent people, justice has to fight back firmly.
Meaning that my husband was a criminal?
Mrs. Mason, I know it's hard for you to understand, but Hook was an outlaw. His time in prison didn't change that.
When we were married, Hook put his past behind him.
I just wish I could make you understand.
I'm afraid you can't, Sheriff. And so if your business here is finished.
Well, I know you're going to be needing money, Mrs. Mason, and if there's anything you'd like to sell, maybe that gun and gun
I'm not
belt.
looking for charity, Sheriff. This gun is not for sale, not to you.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Mason.
Mrs. Mason, about your husband's gun and gun belt.
Yes.
You see, I'm sort of a collector. The gun is distinctive. I would like to buy it.
But I wouldn't even know what it's worth.
Would you accept $100?
$100? But surely it's not worth that much.
Believe me, it is.
You're very kind. Thank you. You may have it.
Mrs. Mason, if there's anything I can do, please call on me.
Thank you.
Goodbye. I hope you'll accept these, Sheriff. I know what you were trying to do.
Thanks, but you gotta let me pay you for them.
Certainly. We can settle later.
Well, I guess it wasn't much use back in there, me trying to talk to her. I don't think she really knew what kind of a man Hook Mason was.
What is it, Dan?
Bad news, I'm afraid. The judge in town has made a big mistake.
The judge? What do you mean?
He agreed with the newspaper that there was no evidence to hold Miller and Holt for trial. He freed him from jail.
The newspaper's a powerful weapon, boys. You should feel mighty lucky about what happened.
Kind of makes me feel sorry for poor old Sheriff Trent.
You should feel a lot sorrier for Hook Mason. He isn't going to be around to share in all that wealth.
Neither will we, unless we get that gun belt off his body. We looked high and low for the place where the money was hidden, and without the map, we'll never find it.
Sheriff's got the map now, and it won't be easy getting it from him.
Now, you're wrong. All of Hook's things have been returned to Mrs. Mason. Deputy told me that about an hour ago.
Then we better pay Hook's wife a visit.
Oh, you leave that to me. You boys just relax and play the part of the peaceful town citizens. It'd attract too much attention for you to be concerned with Hook's gun.
How are you going to get it, Crowell?
Mrs. Mason needs money for her trip east. I'm sure she'll be more than happy to sell the gun. And I'm sorry to see you leave, Mrs. Mason. A pretty woman like yourself is a welcome sight in this grubby town.
I think it's for the best, Mr. Crowell.
I guess you know how I feel about your husband. Well, the whole thing was just terrible.
Please, I'd rather not talk about it.
Well, of course. And, oh, by the way, I'm willing to make you a very good offer for your husband's gun.
Hook's gun? Don't tell me you're going to be like all the rest of them, Mr. Crowell. I thought you were a man of words, not weapons.
Well, I'm making a collection of weapons. It's sort of a hobby.
Well, I'm afraid you won't be able to add this one to your collection. I've already sold it.
Sold it? Well, who bought it?
A friend of Sheriff Trent's. I don't know his name, but he gave me a very good price for it, and, well, I really needed the money.
Oh, well, of course. I suppose the cartridge belt was included?
Well, yes, but surely that wasn't important.
Well, to a collector, yes. Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Mason. I'm sorry to have troubled you.
Well, that's quite all right. Thank you for coming.
Good day.
Good day. I'm all wrong about this, but it seems strange the way Mr. Crowell was so interested in that gun and the gun belt.
I don't understand, Mary. Why are you telling us this?
Well, I've had time to think, Sheriff. And I've been thinking about some of the things Hook said. The way he used to talk about easy riches and the bitterness he held for the law.
But where could Crowell fit into this?
Don't forget, Sheriff, it was his newspaper that helped free Holt and Miller. Maybe he had a reason. Being part owner of the stage line, he might have known about that cash shipment and how to find a way to steal it.
Strange, him talking about collecting guns. The way I had him figured, he didn't have any use for the things.
And he mentioned the cartridge belt, as though the gun were no good without it.
Sheriff, may I see that gun and cartridge belt?
No. There it is.
Well, I really have to be getting along.
Goodbye, Mrs. Mason.
Goodbye.
Mary, thanks for coming down. Appreciate it. May I take you home?
Oh, I'll be all right. Thank you, Sheriff.
Bye. Well, there goes a real woman. Sure hate to see her leave Orville. Did you find anything, mister?
Oh, everything seems... Wait a minute.
What is it, sir?
This cartridge, Dan. Look at it, Sheriff.
Oh, it's got tiny knife marks on it.
Yes, as if the bullet had been pried out.
But why would anybody do that?
Sheriff, do you have a knife?
Yeah, sure. There you are. What in the Sam Hill is that?
It's a map.
But a map to what?
Castle Butte, Little Mesa. Now, this represents the area where we first captured Holt and Miller. All the rocks out there look the same. If a man like Hook Nason wanted to hide something, he'd need a map to find it again. He'd need this map.
So that's why Crowell was so interested in Mason's gun belt.
Well, what are we waiting for?
Covering the money is one thing, Sheriff. But to put Holt and Miller back behind bars again is another. We've got to catch them with the stolen money. Sheriff, can you get me some clothes? Something that an Easterner would wear?
I guess so. What are you planning?
I want Crowell or his boys to get this map back again. And when they get it, we're going to be right behind them.
Well, these clothes the sheriff gave us seem to fit you perfectly.
Well, young man, do you have any souvenirs of the West I might purchase? Some authentic Western guns, for example? How do I sound, Dan?
It's like you just stepped off a stage from the East. It's a fine disguise.
Let's hope it fools Miller and Holt when the sheriff and I go into our act. You better give me that false bullet.
Here it is, sir. And here's Mason's gun and gun belt.
Thanks, Dan.
I put your regular clothes in Victor's saddlebag.
We'd better get on to town. I told the sheriff we'd meet him in front of the hotel in an hour.
I hope this plan of yours works out all right, sir.
Don't worry, Dan. I won't take any unnecessary chances. After all, I wouldn't want to get these spectacles broken now, would I? Let's go. Sheriff! I looked over this gun, and it's only worth $20. No more, no less.
Well, that's too bad. My friend wants a little more than that.
Incidentally, Sheriff, he ought to be more careful about the cartridges he intends to use. Someone might think the mechanism is faulty if he tries to shoot this bullet. It's a dud, you know.
Yeah, well, I'll tell him about it.
Sheriff, if you don't mind, I'd like to keep this as a souvenir of the West.
Well, you're welcome to it. How long are you going to be in town?
Oh, not very long. I've rented a horse. I think I'll ride around a bit and enjoy the scenery. Good day, Sheriff.
Okay.
Miller, get Crowell. Tell him what happened. I'll get the horses and we'll follow.
Isn't this awfully dangerous, sir?
It's the only way, Dan. I have to do this alone. Now, you join the sheriff and do exactly as we've planned.
Right.
If he stayed on the trail while we took a shortcut, he should be here by now. Wait, that's it. Here he comes.
Get off that horse!
Well, what's going on here?
Get off that horse!
Come on. Say, why you can't do a thing like that?
Where's that bullet you were talking about?
A bullet?
Yeah. The one you took from the gun. The one you were checking for the sheriff's friend. Where is it?
Oh, the bullet. Yes, sir. You mean this one? Why, you... Just a moment. You're losing a spur.
Why, you...
Take it easy, Dan. The Ranger's got to lose. It's part of the plan.
I know.
Let's go.
What about him?
Forget him. He can't identify us. Lead the way, Hope. Come on, we'll get that money.
All right, Dan, you go after Victor. I'll join the Lone Ranger. This time we know where those three are heading.
That's it, boys. A nice week's pay for all of us.
Payday is over. Drop your guns.
Hold it, Crowd. You're not going anyplace. For the second time, I'm arresting you for the Wells Fargo hold-up and killing.
And this time, the charge is going to stick.
You know, it's kind of funny. Crowd seems to think the pen is mightier than the sword. I wonder how much good that's going to do him in prison. Come on. I'm mighty glad you decided to stay in Orville, Mary.
Well, I realize now how wrong I was about a lot of things.
You're making the right decision, Mrs. Mason. This town will be in good hands as long as John Trent is sheriff.
Thanks. You too, Dan. Appreciate your help.
Goodbye, Sheriff.
Adios, Sheriff. Goodbye, Mrs. Mason.
Goodbye.
Bye.
He's a remarkable man, isn't he?
Yes, Mary. We both owe a lot to the Lone Ranger.
The Lone Ranger.
Hi-yo, Silver!
A fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty hi-yo Silver. The Lone Ranger.
Hi-yo, Silver! Away!
With his faithful Indian companion Tonto, the daring and resourceful masked rider of the plains led the fight for law and order in the early West. Return with us now to those thrilling days of yesteryear. The Lone Ranger rides again.
Pretty good, huh, Grandpa?
Yeah. But when I was your age, I could do that with both eyes shut and a riding lickety-split.
Guess there weren't many outlaws like you in these parts, huh, Grandpa?
No, guess not. They just wasn't put together like I was. 1 part corn liquor and 3 parts dynamite. And if I hadn't got shut up in Brewster City, I'd still be on the top of the heap, maybe in California by now.
I asked you to milk the cow an hour ago.
Sorry, Mom.
I don't like to nag, son, but I can't do everything myself.
All right, all right.
Before you go, let me have that gun.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I better take that. It's empty now, but you being a woman, you're still liable to hurt yourself.
Dad, we've been living here with you on the farm now for 6 months, and we're grateful to you for helping us out. But why can't you leave the boy alone? Stop putting a gun in his hand.
What's wrong with teaching a young one to shoot straight?
You're not just teaching him to shoot straight. You're filling him full of wild tales, egging him on to a life of crime.
Adventure.
I don't care what you call it. It's still crime. Leave him alone.
Leave him alone. Leave him alone. That's all I hear from morning till night. Haven't you got any other topic of conversation?
Shelby's all I think about. All I worry about. I don't want him to be like you, loafing all the time, getting a lot of crazy ideas. Why don't you help him develop a sense of responsibility?
Who to? A bunch of pigs and chickens? Trouble with you, Elizabeth, is you haven't got any imagination. You're just like that woman I married. That's why my son turned out to be a jellyfish. Well, it's going to be different with him.
What's wrong, Dan? Why were you riding so fast?
There's been some trouble in Brazos.
What kind of trouble?
Well, I stopped by the post office to see if there was any mail from Tonto. When I came out, I found out that 2 bandits had robbed the bank, murdered a guard.
Did anyone recognize the killers?
Yes, sir. They were Moose Miller and Pecos Smith.
Miller and Smith.
I remember Tonto telling me about them before he left for his tribe's council meeting.
Dan, Miller, and Smith are wanted by half the sheriffs in this area. Do you know which direction they took?
They rode west.
You come back with mighty important information.
When you have the Lone Ranger for an uncle, sir, you learn to do that.
While Tonto's away visiting his Indian friends, you may learn a lot more. Let's see if we can pick up the killer's trail. Come on.
What are we stopping for? Don't tell me the great Moose Miller's lost.
The Haskell farm must be around here someplace.
Suppose this Haskell character won't hide us out.
He will. I think it's down this way. Come on.
Here are some hot biscuits, son.
Thanks, Mom. Grandpa, you never did tell me what happened in Brewster City.
Well, your mom don't like for me to talk about it.
Brewster City was his Waterloo.
If that means you gopher I was working with have been smart, we'd have got away without a scratch.
If the law hadn't caught you in Brewster City, you'd have been caught somewhere else.
You're wrong, woman. By now I'd be in California, living off the fat of the golden land.
What were you after in Brewster City?
Oh, about 5,000 in gold.
Gosh.
Oh, it wasn't just the money I was after, boy. It was excitement.
Yeah, I know.
Never had any excitement. Grew up in this self-same farm just like you, milking the cows, feeding the pigs. But always looking off to the hills and never seeing what was on the t'other side. Just plumb tied me up in knots. But one day I joined up with a bunch of hustlers, ornery pack that ever rode out of Texas. And from that day, boy, the world was my oyster until...
I bet.
Shelby, you haven't finished your supper.
Can't, Mom. I'm in a hurry.
I thought you were going to do your schoolwork tonight.
Not tonight, Mom.
Shelby, I hope you're not going into town to meet those Ashley boys.
Please, Mom, don't start that again.
I've told you how I feel about Tom Ashley. You know the kind of reputation he has.
Excuse me, Mom. I'm in a hurry.
Shelby!
Oh, lay off the kid.
You don't care what happens to him, do you? He can run around with the Ashley boys, get into all kinds of trouble, fail in his schoolwork. It just doesn't matter to you.
Oh, shucks. Shelby's old enough to look out for himself.
I want to read you something.
Huh? What is it?
A theme Shelby wrote when he was in the 5th grade. It's called The Most Important Man in the Whole World. Listen. My grandpa is the most important man in the whole world. He's not afraid of anybody. He is big and strong and honest, like George Washington, who was our first president. When I grow up, I want to be like him, so he will be proud of me. Shelby's always wanted you to be proud of him, ever since he was a little boy. I thought his devotion to you would do something to you inside. Would turn you into something he could look up to and admire. But I was wrong.
Gosh!
Don't worry, kid. I won't hurt you. Know anybody in these parts by the name of Haskell?
Sure, that's my name. I'll bet you're looking for my grandpa, Jim Haskell.
Haskell's your grandpa? How about that, Pecos? Haskell's the kid's grandpa.
Time we had some luck.
Will you take us to the old man?
Sure, I'd be glad to. You two fellas in some kind of trouble?
Don't ask questions, kid. Just do what I say.
All right, but you needn't get sore. If you're in trouble, you can count on Grandpa. Me too.
Hey, you're all right. Show us the way.
The ground is getting mighty hard underfoot, sir.
Yes, Dan. Looks like we'll lose the trail soon. It seems to go south from here. Did you ever hear of Jim Haskell?
Haskell? Yes, I think so. I seem to remember you telling Tonto he was a gun runner and outlaw about 15 years ago.
That's right, Dan. He was wounded in the holdup, spent some time in prison, then retired on a farm not far from here. I knew his son. He was a fine man.
Do you think the killers went to Haskell for help?
And it's possible. We'd better check that first before we do anything else. I understand Haskell turned over a new leaf, but I may be wrong. Let's go.
I'm hungry enough to eat hay. What's taking the old guy so long? Something tells me we shouldn't have come here.
All right, pipe down. Here he comes now.
Turn that light down. If my daughter-in-law ever finds out you're here, she'd raise the roof. I'll bring you some grub.
Thanks.
I told you could count on Grandpa. Me too.
Ham and apple cider.
Here, Pecos, I'll pour it for you. There's plenty more in the house.
Hey, Moose, the kid's all right. Grub sure is good.
Yeah, my mom's a swell cook.
But you don't like strangers, is that it, kid?
No woman likes stranger folk hanging around. That all you want? Just the grub?
We was figuring on sticking around for a day or two.
Sure, that's all right, isn't it, Grandpa?
I don't know.
Don't have to worry. There's a loft. We'll keep out of sight.
What about them horses?
I'll take them around back of the barn. Mom will never see them.
I don't know. I want to have a talk with these fellas, Shelby. You get on the outside.
What do you want to get rid of me for?
Let the kid stay.
Do as I say, son. Take care of the horses.
Oh, all right.
Now, just what kind of trouble are you fellas in?
What's the matter, Haskell? You getting nervous in your old age?
No, but when I give bed and board to a couple of flea-bitten range folks, I like to know what I'm letting myself in for.
How about letting yourself in for some of this?
Gee whitters. You must have stuck up a bank.
He may be old and nervous, but he isn't stupid.
Let us stay here for a day or two, and I'll double this when we leave.
Then it was a bank, huh?
Over to Brazos. We plugged a guard.
Keep your mouth shut, Pecos. Oh, what do you say, Haskell?
Yeah, take back your money.
What's the matter? Don't you like the smell of this stuff anymore?
Oh, sure. But I don't want to be paid for doing a favor for a couple of fellas. Just make yourselves to hum.
horses are hidden.
Good. Wait a minute. You hear that? Somebody's coming. Put up your hands, mister. And you too.
I'd advise you to put that gun away.
And I'd advise you to do as I say.
All right, if you insist. You're Tom Haskell's son, aren't you?
That's right, I am.
You're Jim Haskell, Tom's father.
Suppose you let us ask the questions, mister. Now, who are you?
And how come you're wearing a mask?
It's a long story, son. But I can assure you I'm on the side of the law.
Yeah? Well, what's your business?
If you put that gun away, I'll tell you why my friend and I have come here.
I think you'd better tell us first.
All right, Mrs. Haskell. My friend and I are on the trail of two killers, Moose Miller and Pecos Smith. They robbed the bank in Brazos this morning and shot the teller in cold blood.
We followed their trail as far as Granite Peak, and then we rode here to find out if you'd seen them.
What makes you think they'd head for this place?
You know the answer to that question as well as I do, Haskell.
Put that gun down, Dad.
What's wrong with you, Elizabeth?
Mom, he's lying. These men are dangerous.
Somehow I don't quite believe that. Put the gun down.
Thank you, ma'am.
Dad, those men haven't been here, have they?
I haven't seen anybody.
Shelby?
Gosh, Mom, you don't think Grandpa and I would help out a couple of killers, do you?
No, son. No, of course not.
Did you notice any strangers in town?
I haven't been to town.
Nobody's been anywhere, mister. Not for a couple of days. So why don't you stop asking questions? We don't know anything about those men you're after.
You heard what my son said?
Yes, ma'am.
Then perhaps you'll go now. You've no business here. Really no business at all.
Sorry, Mrs. Haskell. Bye.
Dad, Shelby, tell me the truth. Those men haven't been here, have they?
Gosh, Mom, how many times do we have to tell you?
Well, that's it.
It's not safe to hide the money here any longer. We've had trouble with that masked man before. I don't like this.
What are you worrying about? They're both gone. Or maybe you think they're coming back.
Either that, or if they spread the word they trail us to Granite Peak, we'll have a dozen posses on our backs. Go after them, Pecos.
Me? Go after them alone?
You heard me.
Why don't we both go?
Because I don't trust the old man any longer. Not after the way he refused our money.
You figure he's thinking about turning us over to the law?
I don't know. But as long as we're holed up here, I want to keep an eye on him. Now get going.
Spend the night here, Dan.
You know, sir, the boy said nobody'd come or gone for 2 days, but he seemed mighty nervous while we were talking to him. It was almost as though he were trying to get us away from the barn.
Yes, I noticed that, too.
Maybe the killers were hiding there.
I don't know. Mrs. Haskell believed her son was telling the truth. She's a fine woman, Dan. I only hope we can catch the crooks without involving the boy.
I hope so, too, sir. But what if the boy is like his grandfather? And what if he lied?
The crooks can't slip through our fingers. I know this territory. This trail is their only avenue of escape. We'll take turns standing guard just in case they leave the farm. Consider yourself lucky that I didn't. Where's your partner? He must still be at the Haskell farm. All right, Dan, get some rope and we'll tie him up. Then we'll ride to the Haskell farm and get Moose Miller.
Right.
Oh, it's you.
Pecos followed the masked man and his friend.
Yeah, I know. Anything happen?
The masked man took him prisoner, and now he's coming to get you.
I gotta get out of here.
Moose?
Yeah, kid, what do you want?
Now that Pecos can't be your partner anymore, maybe you can use a new one.
You? Don't make me laugh. That's your first pair of long pants.
I'm the best shot in White River County. Ask Grandpa. And I've been riding since I was knee-high.
You sound like a natural, all right. Look me up in California in 5 or 6 years.
California? Gosh, is that where you're heading?
That's where gold is easy pickings.
You better take me along, Moose. Otherwise, you don't stand much chance getting there.
No? How come?
There's only one trail out of town, the way you rode in. The same way the masked man's coming back.
I'll find the trail later on. Right now, I'm covering ground.
That's just it, Moose. There's no ground to cover.
What do you mean?
We're hemmed in on the north and east by White River. And this time of the year, it's plenty deep and fast.
I'll head south.
That way's Granite Peak, and it's solid. Except I know a secret trail. Found it when I was a kid.
Show it to me, will you, boy?
Sure, Moose. I'll lead you back to the main trail, too.
Say, you're all right. Maybe I'll change my mind about you and take you to California after all.
Gosh, you really mean it?
Sure. Let's go.
Grandpa!
Get on up to the house, Shelby.
I haven't got time to argue with you, Haskell. The masked man and his pal are on their way back here.
That's right. They captured Pecos, and now they're coming to get him.
Well, get going. Nobody's stopping you.
Take it easy, Grandpa. I'm going with Moose. Maybe to California. That's what you've been aiming for me to do, isn't it? Cut loose from the pigs and go places?
Yeah, son. That's what I've been aiming for you to do, but all of a sudden I realized something. It's no good moving out on pigs if you're going to move in with killers. And it's no good having people look up to you if you're dangling at the end of a rope.
Cut the gab, Haskell. Come on, kid.
You're not taking my boy with you, Miller.
Why, you...
Ah! Grandpa! Grandpa! He gave you food, a place to sleep. He was your friend. You had no right hitting him.
Come on, kid. Let's go.
But, Grandpa!
I said, come on. Move. All right, get going. Get on your horse. Hurry up. I'll start leading the way. If you make a false move, I'll drill you through the head. Go on.
Shelby. Shelby. Shelby! Oh! Dad, you're hurt.
I'm all right.
Where did Shelby go? Dad, answer me.
With Moose Miller.
Moose Miller.
We lied to you, Elizabeth. Them killers was here. The masked man caught one of them, and now Shelby's gone off with the other one, Miller.
Oh, Dad!
Oh, it's all my fault, filling his head full of ideas. I'm going to town and get the sheriff. It's the masked man and his friend.
Thank heaven you're here. Moose Miller just left and took my boy with him.
They're heading south to Granite Peak. If you hurry, maybe you can catch up with them.
Please, please go after them.
Don't worry, Mrs. Haskell. We'll bring your boy back to you safe and sound. Jim, keep your eye on this man.
Go on, kid.
Catching up. I hear hoofbeats.
I'll go that way, Dan. You head him off the other way so we can box him in.
Don't try anything funny.
I'm not, Moose. Honest. I've never tried to find my way before at night. Somebody's coming.
Quick, over there.
Sir?
Yes, Dan. Keep him covered.
Sir?
Thanks. On your horse, son. Everything is under control, Mrs. Haskell. The sheriff has the 2 killers under lock and key. The bank is sending a courier to pick up the stolen money.
You sure you haven't overlooked something, mister?
I am not so sure.
You don't have to worry about me, mister. Honest.
Now, the kind of a grandpa I'm going to be from now on. As Elizabeth said, I was always filling Shelby's head full of wild tales, trying to live my life all over again through him. I didn't stop to think that maybe I might be leading him up the wrong trail. But your coming has taught me a lesson. In fact, it's taught us both a lesson. There's 2 ways for a fellow to look for adventure. By tearing everything down or building everything up. And somehow I like your way best, mister. Because, well, because...
Look what it's done for us.
That's right, son. Adios, my friends.
Gosh, Mom, I wonder who he is.
Why, son, he's the Lone Ranger.
The Lone Ranger. A fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty Hi-Yo Silver. The Lone Ranger.
Hi-Yo Silver! Away!
With his faithful Indian companion Tonto, the daring and resourceful masked rider of the plains led the fight for law and order in the early West. Return with us now to those thrilling days of yesteryear. The Lone Ranger rides again.
Silver's leg hurt him again, Kemo Sabe?
No, Tonto. It seems better today. His lameness has left him entirely. We've had a long ride, and I think the big fella deserves a rest. We'll make camp here and get an early start in the morning.
Gila River only 2 or 3 days away now. Silver and Scout both have vacation when we get there.
I think they know where we're going.
Them remember long green grass along banks of river.
If we cross into the Badlands tomorrow, we'll need some supplies. There's a town up ahead called Whipsaw. While I set up camp here, I'd like you to go into town and buy what we need.
Whipsaw? Me hear of that town before. Trouble there not long ago. Outlaw named Bat Larson kill a man.
Yes, Tonto. Larson's been caught. He's in jail now, charged with murder.
Jail, good place for a man like Larson.
An excellent place. I only hope there's no trouble at the trial.
You think Larson's men maybe try to help him?
That's always a danger. And I'm probably worrying for no reason. At any rate, let's hope so.
Me be back soon, Kemo Sabe.
Be careful, Tonto.
hurt, lady?
I'm all right. That dirty dry gulcher. I'd like to get my hands on him just once.
Him try kill you?
Yeah. You saved my life, Injun. What's your name?
Me, Tonto.
I'm Maud McKenzie. Folks calls me Mrs. Mack.
Why him try kill you?
Ever hear of Bat Larson?
Him renegade.
Bat's in jail waiting trial for murder, and I'm witness to the killing. That answer your question? Anything special you like to eat?
No. Why you ask?
I run the restaurant. And from here on, anything you want's on the house. Now, come on, help me find my horse so's we can report this to Sheriff Cooper. One of Larson's men tried to kill me.
What?
The varmint ambushed me. If Tonto here hadn't come along, your star witness would be pushing up cactus.
That dirty coyote, I'll fix him.
Now, hold on, Bill. You can't beat up on your own prisoner.
I suppose not.
Are you sure it was one of Larson's men?
Who else has a reason for wanting to kill me? The food in my cafe's not that bad.
Better organize a posse.
But the Larson out to murder me, you'd do better giving me a guard.
I got trouble enough guarding him. Wait a minute. Mrs. Mack, you and me are going over and see Judge Jordan.
What for?
We'll get you a lawyer, and we'll find Larson's lawyer and go in that cell, and you can make out a written deposition that'll be used at the trial, just in case anything happens to you.
In case anything happens?
With that deposition available for evidence, why, killing you wouldn't do Larson any good. Matt, do you mind watching the office for me?
Oh, no, not if you'll stop by the store and tell my assistant where I am.
Thanks. Let's go, Mrs. Mack.
Come on, Tonto.
Did you tell the boys to ambush Mrs. Mack?
Sure I did.
You crazy fool. If they'd killed her, you'd have been lynched.
I hadn't thought of that.
Well, let me do the thinking. I sent a telegram to her brother that'll bring results.
You and your fancy plans. You got the keys, why don't you just turn me loose?
Because as a fugitive, you wouldn't be much use as a partner.
At least I'd be alive.
Well, you better hope Mrs. Mack stays that way. She's preparing a sworn statement that can be used at the trial.
What?
Relax. When she gets on the witness stand, she'll retract every word of that statement. And she'll refuse to testify against you. You'll walk out of that court a free man.
After saying goodbye to Mrs. Mack and purchasing supplies, Tonto lost no time in returning to camp to tell the Lone Ranger what had happened.
Having Mrs. Mack make that deposition is a clever move, but I think it'll force Larson into more desperate measures.
Maybe gang raid jail.
They might. I'm sure they won't give up their leader without some kind of a fight.
Larson plenty smart outlaw.
That's what puzzles me, Tonto. 4 years ago, Larson was just an ordinary gunslinger. Now he's a highly successful outlaw leader.
Sometimes smart men act like fool to throw enemy off guard.
Yeah, that could be the answer. Anyway, tomorrow we'll try to make sure that nothing interferes with Larson's trial and the jury's verdict.
You think gang threaten jury?
Maybe. But there'll never be any respect for law and justice in the West if criminals are allowed to intimidate witnesses, and juries are prevented from performing their duties.
That night at the telegraph office in Whipsaw, Frankie, the relief operator, received a message addressed to Mrs. Mack from her brother Silas.
Mr. Block?
Yeah?
The telegram came.
Driving from Stillwater, arrive tomorrow. Love, Silas. When you get off duty, get hold of Kelso. In the morning, you two are going to stage an ambush.
Here comes a wagon now.
name Silas Hartwell?
Why, yes. How did you know that?
Shut up. I'm going to take you to the boss.
But, gentlemen, I assure you, I have virtually no money.
We don't want your money. Now, let's just be quiet here, no?
I'll get a rope and tie him up.
Hands off me.
Shut up.
I'll give you...
Let's go, Tonto.
Let's get out of here.
Are you all right, sir?
More bandits.
We're not bandits. I work for the law even though I wear this mask.
You know, this is most peculiar. First, bandits who didn't want any money, and now a policeman who wears a mask.
They didn't want any money?
No, it was amazing. I've never been west of St. Louis in my life. But these hoodlums addressed me as Silas Hartwell and said their boss wanted to see me.
We go after bandits, Kemo Sabe?
First, let's find out why they wanted Mr. Hartwell. Do you know anyone living in this vicinity?
My sister. I received a telegram stating that she was ill. So ill, in fact, that I rented this wagon in Stillwater and came on without waiting for my stage connection.
What's your sister's name?
Maud Mackenzie. She's the proprietor of the restaurant.
Mrs. Mack.
Her not sick. Somebody make mistake.
Maybe it isn't a mistake.
Did you get him?
We got him all right, and we're tying him up when a masked man and an Injun showed up.
Masked man?
Well, he shot the gun right out of my hand. There was nothing we could do but clear out.
Oh, you fools. When Hartwell talks to his sister, he'll find out that telegram we sent was a fake. And they'll wonder why Hartwell's answer wasn't delivered.
They'll come asking me about it. What'll I tell them?
Oh, Mrs. Mack doesn't know anything about telegrams. Chances are Hartwell doesn't either. You can fake some kind of an answer.
It's awful risky.
It'll be worth the risk if we can get our hands on Hartwell. Now get out of here before somebody sees you.
Maudie!
My goodness, why didn't you let me know you were coming?
Well, I sent you a telegram from Stillwater in answer to yours.
I didn't get any telegram. I didn't send any either.
You mean to say you haven't been ill?
Ill? Of course not.
That's just what I suspected.
Mercy on us. Hold up.
I'm sorry if I startled you, Mrs. Mackenzie, but I'm no bandit.
Then what are you?
He's our friend, and he's here to help us.
I'm not sure, but I think the telegram your brother received was sent by Larson's men.
What makes you say that?
Well, it looks as though they plan to capture Mr. Hartwell and to use him to make you change your testimony.
Of all the low-down tricks.
But a clever trick. Too clever for Bat Larson.
Him leader of gang.
I don't think so, Tonto. Those men said they wanted to take Mr. Hartwell to the boss. They couldn't have met Larson because he's in jail.
Then someone else is back of this?
Exactly.
I'll go right down to that telegraph office and find out who sent that fake telegram.
I'd rather you didn't just yet, Mrs. Mack.
Why not?
I'll explain after you and your brother report this new ambush attack to the sheriff.
Oh, whatever you say, sir. Come along, Maud.
Sound like Mrs. Mack have good idea. Telegraph operator keep record of all wires. Then maybe him able to remember who sent fake telegram to brother of Mrs. Mack.
He probably would be able to remember, but I don't think he'd admit it.
You suspect him work for Larson, too?
There's a very good chance of it.
Why you think that?
Now, this is a small town, Tonto. Everybody in Whipsaw must be well acquainted with Mrs. Mack. The operator must have known she wasn't ill, and yet...
Me understand. Yet him send fake message anyway.
That's right.
But it'd be hard to prove operator crook, Kemo Sabe.
Yes, Tonto, it would. I think I'll let the operator trap himself, as well as the men who work for Larson.
What's your plan?
When Mrs. Mack comes back, I'll ask her to go to the telegraph office and register a routine complaint, and then pretend to be satisfied with whatever explanation is offered. Then, she'll send a telegram.
That evening, following the Lone Ranger's instructions, Mrs. Mack went to the telegraph office. Hal Judson, the regular operator, had just gone off duty.
Take a look at this, Frankie.
What is it?
It's a phony telegram sent from here 3 weeks ago. Know anything about it?
Oh, no, I don't, Miss Mac. Well, this was sent from Stillwater.
What?
Yes, see these numbers here in the corner? Each office along the line has a different set. Those mean that this particular message originated in Stillwater.
Well, maybe so, but how come I didn't get the answers from my brother?
Well, if he sent them, you should have received them, but I don't remember getting anything for you lately.
All I can say is if I ran my restaurant the way you people run your telegraph service, a lot of folks would starve to death.
I'm sorry, Miss Mac.
Well, see if you can send this one and not get it lost.
Atkins Wesson, Stage Line, Stillwater, Arizona. Please reserve space for Silas Hartwell on tomorrow's eastbound stage. Maud McKenzie. Well, that'll be 85 cents.
All right. Now, you see that that one gets there.
Don't worry, Miss Mac. Like a couple of cigars, Mr. Block.
Hey. What's up?
Hartwell's taking the eastbound stage out of Stillwater tomorrow.
When you get off, meet Kelso and me here.
There you are. Good night, Mr. Block.
Good night.
Mrs. Mac leave telegraph operator go to buy cigars. Me think him whisper to man who runs store, but me not able to hear anything.
I suspected he'd pass the information along to someone.
Signs say store belonged to a man named Matthew Block. You think him the one we're after?
It looks that way. But until we get proof, we'll keep our suspicions to ourselves.
Much talk without proof make plenty bad medicine.
So we'll concentrate on getting that proof. Let's tell Mrs. Mac and Mr. Hartwell the rest of our plan.
Gentlemen?
Good. Do you have some canvas?
It's in the back of the wagon.
Silas, are you sure you want to go through with this?
Oh, now, Maud.
Don't worry, Mrs. Mac. We'll see that he's protected.
I know you will. And when you get back, I'll have a dinner waiting for you, the like of which you never set teeth into.
Well, that's a promise. You'd better get started. We'll meet you on the other side of town.
Fine. Come along, Maud.
Let's go, Tonto.
He's getting ready to leave now.
Yeah, and traveling alone. It's just about perfect.
Now, you take care of yourself, Silas.
Oh, stop worrying, Maud. All right. Keep going.
Bye. Don't forget to ride.
Get after him, but be careful. Wait till he's well out of town.
Don't worry, boss. We'll get him this time.
Gentlemen? All right, go on. Here.
Oh, good morning, Mrs. Mac.
Good morning.
You're in early.
Yeah. You still have those tins of extra fancy sardines?
I certainly do.
I want 2 of them. And some cherries and some olives. Silas just loves olives.
What did you say?
I said olives. I'm having kind of a celebration dinner for Silas tonight, and I want all the trimmings.
But I thought...
Anything wrong?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Mack. I just remembered some business I have to attend to. Eddie will take care of you.
Oh, all right. I'll give him the rest of my order.
When Mrs. Mack mentioned the celebration dinner, Block realized that Silas was returning in the evening and, suspecting a trap, rode out of town to warn Kelso and Frankie.
Here he comes. Get ready.
Hold up there. Whoa! Get your hands up.
Drop those guns. Magnificent. Absolutely magnificent.
Take off those masks.
This one, telegraph operator, Kemo Sabe. Me not know this one.
Mr. Hartwell, hand me that rope.
What are you going to do to us?
We're going to tie you up. Then you're going to answer a few questions. Which one of you will do the talking?
We got nothing to say.
You have a great deal to say. Who told you to ambush Mr. Hartwell? Was it Matthew Block? I'm waiting for an answer.
Me know how make 'em talk, Kemo Sabe.
You're not going to torture him.
It's an idea.
Wait a minute. I'll talk if you promise things will go easy for me.
Don't move, any of you.
Boss.
All right, masked man, drop your gun. You too, Injun.
Matt, this yellow-livered skunk was gonna squeal.
Yeah, I know. Looks like you fell into your own trap, mister.
The law will catch up with you eventually.
You'll never see the day. All right, on time, and no tricks. Not him, the other one.
What's the idea?
You're gonna stay like that for a while.
He plans to murder you too, Frankie.
Well, you're loco. Isn't he, Matt?
Somebody's got to take the blame for killing these two. Yeah, it'll be like a three-way gunfight with no survivors.
No!
Come on, come on. Ooh, give it a look.
Nice work, Tonto. Take care of Frankie's wound. Then we'll tie them and take them into town. Well, Sheriff, now that Frankie has made a full confession, I don't think you'll have any more trouble from the so-called Larson gang.
Gonna knock me over with a pin feather when Matt Block turned out to be the real leader.
Goodbye, Mrs. Mack. I'm sorry we can't stay for that celebration dinner, but Tonto and I have to be on our way.
Don't mention that dinner. I almost ruined your whole plan.
Block and his men being caught is the important thing. Goodbye, sir. Thanks for all you did. The West needs more men of your courage.
Oh, you overwhelm me, sir. I wish you could stay.
We'll be back again soon. Adios.
Now, there's what I call a real man. I wish I were 30 years younger.
Maud, you don't even know who he is.
Do you?
Well, certainly. I may be just a tenderfoot Easterner, but I know the most famous man in the West when I see him. He's the Lone Ranger.
Be with the Lone Ranger and Tonto same time next week for new dangers in another thrill-packed adventure when the Lone Ranger rides again. Ranger.